So I'm going to try and answer the 3 most pressing questions that I got about this Resin's debubbling machine. One is how to avoid trapped bubbles once you've removed the bubbles from the resin. The other is, can you use molds in the machine to remove bubbles? And the third is, can you remove bubbles from resin that has already had colour in it? I've got my resin mixed up now, and as you can see, there is a lot of bubbles in there. And if I was to pour that and cure up my resin, I would be left with quite a lot of bubbles. You won't believe how clear it will make your resin. I'm sharing this quite a lot because I think this is such a massive game changer for all those frustrated resin crafters out there that really get so annoyed with the bubbles that are left in their stuff. Now, you will have 1 or 2 bubbles that are on the top, and I would suggest leaving it for about another minute, just sitting here like that, to let those bubbles dissipate. Waiting that extra minute has really made a difference and got rid of all the bubbles. Now, this machine isn't going to stop you trapping bubbles when you pour. So always when you're pouring, pour slowly and down the side. So you fill it up nice and evenly, because don't forget you're pouring a liquid onto air, and as a result, you will trap air into any little nooks and crannies and different bits and pieces in there. Give it a bit of squidgy widgy around the ears and around the neck area, and then any bubbles that have come up to the top, they should be easily dissipated using a long neck lighter, never a torch, remember. And we're going to leave that now overnight, and that will cure up. So I was asked a lot in my previous video whether you can add colour to this first before putting it into the pot, and would that make any difference? I actually don't know, because I only ever really use it for clear resin and then add my colour afterwards. So what I thought I would do is give it a test for you. Now, there's quite a lot of bubbles in this, and I'm using a transparent pigment here to be able to check this for you so you can actually see the bubbles, because I think if I use something opaque, then what's going to happen is we're not going to see the bubbles anyway. Pop my little valve in, and I'm going to give it 9 minutes. Leave that and let it do its thing, and then at the end of this I'll show you why you shouldn't put your molds in here. Well, we're nearly halfway, and it has definitely frothed it up, but it seems to have frothed it up a lot more with the colour in. But let's wait until the end and see what happens. Well, that's nearly finished now, and it does seem to have cleared the bottom part, but it's still quite frothy on the top. Now I'm going to take it out. It has cleared it, but only the bottom half. It hasn't cleared this bit here. We're going to leave it for 1 minute like I normally do, and we'll see if that will clear the rest, and then we can have a look and maybe pop it in again. Well, that's had 1 minute and it's still not cleared that top. So what I'm going to do is pop it in again, but this time just for 5 minutes, and see if that does any difference. It looks to me like the colour does cause it to create more bubbles that stick in there, but we will see. Well, the second 5 minutes is nearly up, and there still seems to be quite a lot of bubbles at the top, but not quite as many as there were before. Well, no, it does seem to have cleared a lot more this time. There's a slight layer there. We'll leave that now for a minute, and then we'll see what it looks like after a minute. I actually left that 3 minutes, and there's still a ring of bubbles on the top. Now, I could put it in for another 5 minutes. I do think that adding colour to it adds an impurity to the resin that causes it to create lots of bubbles. Well, that's had its extra 5 minutes now, so let's take that top off. That is definitely looking a lot more promising. It just takes a little bit longer if you've got colour in there. Let's get rid of some of those bubbles on the top, and we can set that there to one side for about a minute, and then we will hopefully have some lovely clear resin. That resin has got lovely and clear. There's 1 or 2 little bubbles sticking to the side, but we can always get rid of those. So what we're going to do is try a different way. I've got some clear resin mixed up here, and I'm going to degas that first, as I would normally with my clear resin. And then I'm going to add the colour to it, stir it in gently, and degas it again. I'm hoping it's going to cut about 5 minutes off the time it takes to clear the coloured resin. So this has already been in, so let's add some colour to this and give it a slow mix so we don't add too many more bubbles. So that's all mixed in there now. I'm going to pop it in for another 5 minutes. I've also poured the first one we did in the mould so we can have a look at that as well. Well, that was a much quicker way of doing it. That cut off a whole 5 minutes from there. Now, there are a few bubbles that are clinging to the edge of the actual pot, but we can carefully push those off like that, and bring them to the middle and then burn them off using a long neck lighter. As you can see, that has cleared that resin beautifully and it was a lot quicker. So if you're going to put colour in it, what I would suggest is you degas your resin first, then add your colour, then pop it in for another 5 minutes. And I think that works really, really well. But in all fairness, I would only use it for transparent colours because anything else, you're not seeing the bubbles anyway. So it's not going to make any difference. One of the other questions is, I've been asked a lot, is can you put a mould in there? Well, my answer to that would definitely be no. Now, this mould's been sitting there a while, so it has actually given off a lot of the probably bubbles, but there'll be still quite a few in there. And the reason is that there is no space above that mould to allow the bubbles and the froth to go, so it's going to just make a mess. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to put it on for 5 minutes, and hopefully that should show you why it's not a good idea to do this. I will stop this, I'm sure, halfway through, because I don't want to make too much of a mess. But I would like it to make a mess in my pot rather than your pots at home. Because this is not a pressure pot. It's not reacting in the same way that a pressure pot would. And a pressure pot shrinks the bubbles down or squeezes the bubbles down so tight that you can't see them by the naked eye. But light will still refract through that differently than if it had no bubbles in. Where what this is doing, this is removing the actual bubbles from the resin. So we're only 2 minutes in, and I'm not sure if you can see, but it's already starting to overflow a little bit there. Look, and these big bubbles that are popping on the top. If you've got a mould in there, then what's going to happen is that is going to froth up like this, and then your resin's going to come out as it's got nowhere to go. And as a result, you're going to not only make a mess, but when it calms down, you are then not going to have as much resin in your mould as you thought you had. This is frothed up now. I've stopped it because I didn't want it to make too much mess in there and have to clear it up. But as you can see, this is not designed just to put moulds in. Well, these have all cured up now. I put them in my curing machine because it's always so much quicker. Now, there are 1 or 2 little tiny micro bubbles in this. I'm not going to say there aren't. Can you see? But a lot of those are what were connected to the outside rather than being deeply penetrated in it. That was the second one I did. Now, the first one I did was this one. And that was where I put it in for extra time. And there is 1 little micro bubble there. And there's a couple on its nose that had got stuck to the casting. But other than that, it's looking really, really good. This is why I love it for the clear. Look at the difference. That's the one without it going in, and there's so many bubbles in there that spoilt that all the way through. And this one is just perfect. I cannot see a single bubble in that anywhere. And that's worked out really well. I would quite happily sell that one, and I would quite happily sell that one, and I'd quite happily sell that cube as well if someone wanted to buy a cube. But I wouldn't be happy selling that one because it's just spoilt from those bubbles that are in there. That's why I love that machine. So it does work with the colours. I would say it's 96% more efficient at getting rid of the bubbles, but it does kind of trap a couple in it and does take a little bit more work, but it is worth it ultimately if you're going to use a transparent colour. But for using clear, I mean, let's be honest, that is beautiful, isn't it? It's perfect. I hope this answered your questions on whether you can use colour and whether you can put your moulds in it. Brilliant little machine. I will link it in the description below. I've been using it for quite a while now, and I've not had any problems with it. I love it. I'm loving these bears. Thank you, Vivian, for sending me the bear mold. Really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the video that's coming up next. I think you'll love this video as well, and it's really helpful and informative. Take care. Enjoy your resin. Bye.